Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome once again to the Honors Lecture Series on Social Justice. My name is Dr. Philip Phillips, and I'm the Associate Dean of the University Honors College. I'm joined by Susan Lyons, who has helped me coordinate this series throughout the course of the semester. I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker today, Percy Verrett. Percy is an MA candidate in the Department of English here at MTSU. She's also a writing tutor and the program coordinator for the ePortfolio at the University Writing Center. She is joining us now for the second time. She gave an outstanding presentation last semester. So outstanding, in fact, that we have invited her back to talk to you today about the ePortfolio. So with that, I will hand it over to Percy.
Great, thank you for the introduction, Dr. Phillips. I will go ahead and begin, let's see, screen sharing. All right, can you all see a presentation here? Okay, fabulous. Let's see, I can get it to go into slideshow mode, yay. All right, yeah, so thank you. Hi, my name's Percy. It's great to be here and see all of your names here today. Hopefully raring to join this conversation regarding ePortfolio, its usages and its relevancy to the larger themes at play here in this lecture series. While the connections between ePortfolio and social justice may seem a little obscure, ePortfolio, and more specifically, its sort of corresponding practice of reflective thinking, reflective writing, which we will spend time discussing more near the end, are really invaluable tools for helping us as students and as developing professionals, as active members of communities, to grow more effective and more circumspect or reflective in our participation within those communities. So today we'll get into some of that while also just diving into a basic introduction to ePortfolio. So in terms of that basic introduction, I thought it would be helpful just to provide a tiny overview of what we'll be covering today here so you can kind of know the general trajectory just of our discussion. So we'll begin by diving into the concept of ePortfolio itself, examining its components, arriving at sort of a definition of it, and then we'll discuss several usages of the ePortfolio here at MTSU, because there are several kind of different ways that they're used. Then we'll spend some time exploring the practice of reflective thinking before then pulling everything together in our conclusion. So with the conclusion, I am planning for there to be like a nice chunk of time at the end for us to go over whatever questions you have about something I did or something you feel I didn't really address. So feel free to like drop comments in the chat box throughout the presentation as you have them, or save them and pipe them up at the end, and I will try to answer all of your questions in our Q&A. So having established all of those things, it's time to dive straight into our primary question here today. So what is ePortfolio? And I wanted to spend some time answering this question because before we get too deep into the conversation, because I know that students have had varying levels of interaction with ePortfolio. So some of you may already have created ePortfolios or heard them discussed before. I think a large percentage of MTSU students have really only encountered ePortfolio through that little like reflect in ePortfolio button that pops up when you're submitting things through Dropbox, which has led to a bit of a misconception that ePortfolio is just another type of Dropbox or filing system. And while you can use ePortfolio to archive assignments like that, it really is a much more sophisticated tool or application than that. So in answer to the question, what is ePortfolio? ePortfolio, in the way that we use the term here at MTSU, is something of a blanket term. And the things that we encompass in this blanket term break down into three main categories. So we have the ePortfolio content, ePortfolio platform, and then ePortfolio presentations. And we're going to look at each of these categories very briefly just to sort of get them rooted into our minds. So first we have ePortfolio content, or artifacts as they're often called. So these are really the building blocks, so to speak, of the ePortfolio. It's what you would typically think of as going into a portfolio. So like completed projects or possibly ongoing projects, examples of work, that kind of thing. So because of its electronic nature, ePortfolios can include a broad range of content. So we have a list here. You can use videos, essays, resumes, honors theses, awards, reflection papers, so on and so forth. Basically, anything that can be turned into a digital file could potentially be used as an artifact. And this is why there's that option to reflect an ePortfolio whenever you submit an assignment through Dropbox, like I mentioned earlier. The system is basically trying to encourage you to compile content in the ePortfolio platform to possibly use in a presentation. So this brings us through to the ePortfolio platform. Here's a screenshot of what it looks like. And basically the ePortfolio platform is like the control panel of ePortfolio. It's the page or set of pages really within D2L where you can upload artifacts and actually go about designing and digitally creating the ePortfolio presentation. And I'm not going to give any sort of tutorial for how to use the platform right now, as that would be rather time consuming and get fairly complex. But I do have a slide at the end, like with the Q&A time, where I'll have information about where you can receive training on the technological aspects of ePortfolio if that's something you feel you need. But for now, it's just important to remember that this is where you upload the content and do the design work for your final ePortfolio presentations. Which brings us to the actual ePortfolio presentation. And I thought I'd include another screenshot, as it's nice and interactive and much easier, I think, than me trying to explain what a presentation looks like. So this is a screenshot of 8 different presentations that each won an MT Engage scholarship, I believe, 2 years ago. And we will discuss those scholarships in a moment. But here you'll notice that each of the presentations looks a bit different from the others, uses different colors, fonts, motifs, that sort of thing. But they all really look like just little websites, really. And that's basically how ePortfolio presentations function. They're essentially your own little website full of whatever artifacts or content you've uploaded and designed into it. So ultimately, when we use the word ePortfolio, the technical definition of the word ePortfolio does refer to that third aspect, the ePortfolio presentation itself. So creating an ePortfolio involves uploading ePortfolio content to the ePortfolio platform to where it is arranged to create that final ePortfolio presentation. And that's how the 3 categories really interact with each other. And to give a formal definition, we have it here at the bottom. An ePortfolio is a curated collection of artifacts that document educational or professional development and are assembled into a digital presentation. And I left this definition a teensy bit vague because, as I hinted before, ePortfolio has many usages across MTSU. And I wanted the definition to apply to all of them. So just like in terms of those usages, sometimes professors will ask that students create an entire ePortfolio, like as a final class project, or a few of our degree programs require students to create an ePortfolio like as their capstone project, in which they document their growth and development across the entirety of their time in the program. However, based on the information that Dr. Phillips provided me regarding the goals and expectations in the context of this lecture series, I thought it would be most helpful for us, for you, if we focused on 2 specific types of ePortfolio that MT Engage encourages students to create, sort of regardless of class or major. And those are the professional / showcase ePortfolio and the MT Engage scholarship ePortfolio. And I think it's very helpful as we begin to look at those two types of ePortfolio, that we look at them through the lens of the portfolio without the E. So I think we're all pretty familiar probably with the idea of the portfolio, with the idea of having a centralized collection of the best examples of an individual's work from across their entire career. And to the degree that we're familiar with portfolios, I think we also have a bit of a stereotype maybe surrounding it, and tend to think of it as something that artists tend to create, right? So we think of painters or illustrators having giant folders filled with their art, like paintings and illustrations and designs. And historically, portfolios have been used more in those sort of artistic fields. However, with the introduction of ePortfolio, and especially with the affordances of its digital aspects, the ePortfolio has come to be an interdisciplinary document or tool that really transcends or extends beyond just like a single field or area. This is partly because with ePortfolio being digital, you can, as I mentioned earlier, include a much broader range of projects, right? And modes of communication, really. So like with portfolios, there was no way to embed a video, right? There wasn't a way to embed an audio file or to include like very lengthy projects into physical portfolios. But the ePortfolio allows you to include just about any type of project. Another affordance of the ePortfolio listed here is that its digital aspect has made it much easier to update the materials that you have in it. So updating materials is as simple as logging onto your ePortfolio platform, clicking a few buttons, and boom, your ePortfolio is updated in real time. So anyone who has the link will see the updates that you've made, not the older version that you originally shared with them. Along a kind of similar track, the fact that ePortfolios are digital means that they're much easier to share, right? So because now, rather than having to print off and carry around like physical copies of a portfolio to literally hand out, you can share it simply by emailing a link. Much easier. So at this point, the question kind of becomes like, okay, yes, I can see that having that one centralized collection of these high points and projects, experiences, achievements, etc., might be cool, but how would I actually use an ePortfolio? To what usage might I put it in my actual life? And the answer is that we live in an age of applications. I feel like I do nothing but submit applications to places these days. And I'm sure any of you who are planning to graduate in the next few semesters can relate to that. But yeah, the answer is that ePortfolio has profound significance as a professional document. So ePortfolios can be really a phenomenal supplement to, yeah, resumes and CVs, and just can really enhance the impact of your applications in many spheres, including career opportunities, scholarships, internships, graduate programs, you name it. Basically, if there's an application involved, the ePortfolio will likely be very useful to you, because committees and people who make these sort of hiring and accepting sorts of decisions are showing more and more that they really like ePortfolios. And it's understandable for numerous reasons, which we have here on the right. So basically, when you compare an ePortfolio to a resume, you can see how an ePortfolio really helps to make an application much more noticeable and memorable, right? So whereas it's very difficult to make a resume stand out, an ePortfolio is highly visual, and this is very eye-catching. It's also very personal. If you think back to the screen grab of ePortfolios that we looked at a few minutes ago, you'll remember that each one had like a it was very individualized, right, in terms of color and presentation. And most of them even had like a picture of the person who created the ePortfolio right there on the first page. So all of these things help to attach your face and really your persona to the qualifications that you're outlining in your resume. Another huge positive is that ePortfolio allows you to provide concrete examples of the qualifications that you highlight in a CV or resume. So I think we've probably all had moments in which we look at our resume or CV and realize that some of the activities we've done, like volunteer work or projects that we've completed, perhaps just don't look like very much on the paper, right? They don't translate very well once they're just reduced to that single line on a document. And it's difficult, it's frustrating, because we know that there's much more merit involved in what we've done, and we wish there were a way to communicate that and demonstrate that. And that's where ePortfolio becomes such a unique document, because you can use it to highlight effort. So if you say that you have experience in planning and creating lengthy projects, you can follow that up by including your honors thesis in a showcase page on your ePortfolio. If you put that you've won a poster presentation award or a short film contest or something, you can add the picture of the award, you can embed the poster, you can embed the video into the ePortfolio so that it's there showing off your work. Yeah, basically any line that you have in your CV or resume, you can take and transform into something vibrant and dynamic in the ePortfolio. And in that sense, ePortfolios can have a sort of equalizing effect, right? Because even if you haven't done as many impressive sounding things, you can show off the impressiveness of the things that you have done. And because ePortfolio does finally create such a dynamic experience for prospective employers and committees, it has the ability to really enhance your applications, and not only like to pave your entrance into a chosen field, but also to increase your ability to integrate yourself into your field and become a force within it, really, like hopefully impacting its practices and policies. So moving along, we'll chat about the second kind of ePortfolio that MT Engage encourages students to create before diving into reflection. And that second kind is the MT Engage Scholarship ePortfolio. So basically, every year MT Engage awards up to 15 scholarships that are valued at up to $6,000 a piece to eligible students who qualify, apply, and submit like a variety of specific documents. And eligibility is based on a few different factors, which I'd be happy to chat about like at the end of the presentation. If anyone wants more info, they're basically things like GPA, number of hours completed in the program, that sort of thing. But surprise, among the application requirements for the scholarship is an ePortfolio that's created using the MT Engage scholarship template. And basically what the template is it's a set of specific pages with specific prompts on them that MT Engage wants any student who's applying to the scholarship to answer in their ePortfolio. And the prompts that MT Engage has devised actually are largely intended to help students create the type of material that you might include in a professional ePortfolio, like what we were just talking about. So essentially creating an ePortfolio for this scholarship could also potentially help you with pulling together the professional one. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 special. But MT Engage has released this quote that I think is super helpful to understanding what the purpose of this ePortfolio is. And it also transitions us into the final topic we'll be discussing. So in this quote, MT Engage moves from kind of discussing their more general goals to a specific statement regarding like the goals of ePortfolio. So they say, quote, "A key piece of MT Engage is getting students to reflect and think about their learning. This metacognitive process will result in students demonstrating their ability to make connections across multiple contexts and educational experiences, and developing a sense of themselves as learners. Examples of this work will be collected in personalized ePortfolios, which will become showcases for students' integration of the knowledge, skills, and abilities gained during their time at MTSU. So basically, this template, asks students to engage in extensive reflection while creating or compiling material related to their educational goals, campus and community experiences, and academic development. So you may have noticed that I have the word reflection bolded here, which is a hint that we're about to deep dive into reflecting on reflection. And I thought we'd set up camp there for a few reasons. The main one being that it is just really an essential skill with any portfolio, but also in life, and particularly as we'll get to eventually in the pursuit of social justice. And I also understand Dr. Phillips has told me that as part of your assignments for this lecture series, you've written or are in the final stages of writing a pair of reflections on like an out of classroom experience, I believe, and then on a few of the lectures that you've heard. And those pieces could very easily make excellent material for an ePortfolio, particularly the scholarship one. But let's see, moving into reflection. So I brought the moon along with me to be my TA, and I chose the moon because, well, I'm hoping we all love the moon. I would think we would. She's beautiful. It's amazing. But more to the point, I'm guessing that one of the first things we learned about the moon, like as kids, is that it doesn't produce its own light, right? It reflects the light of the sun. So the moon engages in reflection. And as you may imagine, given the degree of love I've just expressed for the moon, I was tremendously pleased when I stumbled onto the idea of using the moon as an example of how to do reflection. But the more I actually thought about it, the more I realized that the moon actually provides us with the perfect example of how not to do reflection. Because the light comes from the sun, and it's the surface of the moon and bounces straight off of it, right? It never goes beneath the surface. And I think something similar happens a lot in our experiences or in our classes, where our teachers will like present us with information or we'll read course materials. And then as that input comes towards us, we try to just bounce it straight back off onto the page in our assignments. We're just repeating what we've been told. And while that sort of practice is tempting, it's basically the exact opposite of what we want to do with reflective writing. So with reflective writing, you want to take the experience or knowledge that comes towards you, and you want to catch it before it bounces, and you want to take it underneath the surface and turn it over and really examine it and consider it and probe it and poke it with the stick and test out your thoughts and feelings towards it. And then finally join all of those things, all of your thoughts, your feelings, your conclusions, and join those things to your understanding of the experience, the learning, what have you, so that when you finally project out your version of that experience or idea, it's no longer exactly the same as when it initially came towards you. So that process of pausing and taking the time to sift through your reaction to or thoughts concerning a thing, and then adding those thoughts and reactions to your understanding of that thing, is basically what reflection is. So reflection is adding yourself to the equation. It's considering, the nature or meaning of an experience and infusing your personal perspective or response to it. And maintaining the moonly motif. I've pulled together a series of reflective phases you can move through as a way of doing that reflecting, of adding yourself to the equation. And I'll just read these off. So when writing a reflection, you might first begin by focusing on the experience itself. So identifying details that caught your attention by asking yourself questions like, what was the main idea of the experience? What made it unique from other experiences? Next, you'll try to integrate your own perspective into your understanding of the experience by considering your reaction to that experience, right? So asking like, how do I feel about this experience? What do I think about this experience? And gradually, you'll begin to integrate the experience or the learning into your perspective by drawing connections between that experience and other aspects of your life. So asking, how does this experience connect to what I've learned in other courses or to experiences I've had outside of university? What linkages can I establish between those things to cement them all further into my memory? Finally, you'll evaluate how what you've learned through this experience will transfer into your future. So asking something like, how has this experience impacted or changed me? How might I apply what I've learned through this experience to my current and future behaviors? And you can see how the writing you would produce through this sort of process will be much richer than if you simply write a chronological account of an experience or simply try to summarize, bounce off the exact information you've learned in class without taking it and personalizing it. Really, it'll be much richer. So in this way, the practice of reflection enhances both your thinking and then also hopefully your writing. So we've talked about reflection, connection, transfer, etc. And these are all skills that fall under the broader umbrella of metacognition, which if you haven't heard the word, it basically means like cognition as in thought, and then meta meaning like in reference to itself. So metacognition is the act of kind of thinking about thinking, of trying to step back from or outside of your thought process and then thinking about that process itself, how you process and perceive things, and then how your processes and perceptions are unique to you, right? They aren't necessarily the same as other people's. And this is where metacognition is super important, really, in developing two main skills that are essential for social justice, those skills being perspective taking and then empathy. Because if you're reflecting on your own thought processes and perceptions and recognizing them as unique and individual to you, then what you're going to realize is that your perspective is different from everyone else's because it's rooted within yourself, right? You perceive the world through yourself, through your own position and experiences within it. And that's called egocentrism, not egoism. That's different. Egocentrism. So this panel is basically me just defining huge words. But ego is self, and then century is like localized upon. So egocentrism is this idea that your perspective is centered within yourself. So you filter everything around you through yourself. But as you become more aware of that through reflection, you become more capable of practicing what's called perspective taking, which is sort of suspending your own perspective and attempting to translate yourself into and enter into another person's wholly individual, unique perspective. So like on that last slide, we were talking about asking yourself, like, what do I feel? What do I think, as ways to understand your own processes. And perspective taking basically takes those questions and applies them to the other person. So what might it feel like to be in their position? What might I think if I were in their position, not my own? And you have to be really careful here that you aren't just wildly projecting yourself onto the other person, but are instead like really focusing on the particulars of their perspective. So saying, if I were not me, if I were perceiving me and the rest of the world from the circumstances and experiences of that other person, what might that be like? And asking these questions and beginning to practice that perspective taking helps you to develop a sense of empathy, so a sense of care towards that person that is rooted in this understanding that their beliefs, their feelings, their perspectives are equally as valid and worthy of protection as your own. So the question becomes, how does this play out with social justice? And basically, what we see in a vast majority of current social practices and legislation regarding social issues is just a complete, absolute lack of empathy that is rooted in an absolute lack of any ability to practice perspective taking. So this is why we will sometimes see like legislatures only switching their perspective to a more equitable one after they or someone they love feels the effects of the abuses that have clearly been going on for decades, but that they refuse to do anything about before until they or someone they love experienced it. And it's because there's this inability to conceive of others' needs and experiences as worthy of redress without having experienced them themselves. So clearly, moving forward as a society, if we want to become more equitable, if we want to become more humane on both like the local and then the national scale, we all need to move towards practicing reflection on our own perspective as a means of, well, becoming better people to begin with, but then hopefully becoming skilled enough to practice that perspective taking and empathy towards others. Because I mean, that's really the only way that people with more power and more privilege will ever give credence, right, to the experiences and emotions of those without power, those without privilege, those who don't have the ability to voice their own perspective upon the world and pretend that it's the only possible one, the way that those of us with more power and privilege, including us, in any given situation tend to do. So tying it all together, practicing these metacognitive tools is essential in your development into a critically thinking, engaged, effective individual across multiple contexts. And you can see how those skills relate into ePortfolio, how they would enable you to create a more dynamic, cohesive ePortfolio presentation that demonstrates achievements and critical thinking skills. I hope you also see how vital this skill of reflection can be when exercised for more personal reasons too. It's very easy to operate in autopilot mode, right? Especially while we're also like we're in our degree programs, we're insanely busy, especially right now at the end of the semester. But pausing and mulling over our perspectives, why we have them, examining our specific behaviors, our habits in terms of how we study, in terms of how we conduct interpersonal relationships, how we arrive at decisions. It can help us determine which of our habits of thought or action are actually contributing to or detracting from us becoming the people that we want to be. And then finally, as we have said, reflection aids individuals in practicing perspective taking and in developing empathy, both of which aid in developing an awareness of and respect for the experiences and emotions of others. So to summarize, by hearkening back to hours ago when we began, ePortfolio is a blanket term that encompasses content that's uploaded to a platform and organized into a presentation. An ePortfolio is a curated collection of artifacts that document educational or professional development and are assembled into a digital presentation. ePortfolios are interdisciplinary documents that supplement and enhance your applications within a variety of professional contexts. Reflection involves considering the nature or meaning of an experience and articulating your personal perspective on a response to that perspective, or sorry, to that experience. So basically by adding yourself to the equation. And then ultimately creating an ePortfolio and participating in its attendant practice of reflection aids you in becoming a more developed, self-aware, empathetic agent, really, within your various contexts and communities. So, having torn our way through all of that, before we get to questions, I'll also very quickly just go ahead and touch on the additional resources that we have here at MTSU to help you with creating ePortfolio. So, for technological aid, we have MTEngage, which you've heard me say a lot of times today. But basically, as I would guess a lot of you know, MTEngage is MTSU's quality enhancement program here on campus. So MTEngage's mission is to develop strategies that support and encourage students' academic engagement within their courses and then across campus. So MTEngage has lots and lots of information on their website. For our purposes, for ePortfolio purposes, MTEngage specifically offers information regarding the MTEngage scholarship ePortfolio, such as the scholarship requirements, application instructions, the scholarship ePortfolio template, and a gallery of past ePortfolio winners, which is super helpful if any of you are interested in just getting kind of a broader feel for what an ePortfolio looks like. MTEngage also works with the Walker Library's tutoring spot to provide free peer tutoring on the technological aspect of ePortfolio. And then they also just have like helpful links to additional ePortfolio guides and tutorials. So to access any of those things, you can visit their website. Then as far as the writing aspect of ePortfolio goes, we have the University Writing Center. So Dr. Phillips mentioned at the beginning, as I said a very long time ago, that I am the ePortfolio program coordinator for the UWC. I also act as a writing tutor. And basically the UWC is dedicated to supporting all writers during all stages of all types of communication-based projects. So that can include oral presentations, yes, scripts for videos that you're trying to make, anything that's related to communication, through free one-on-one peer tutoring. So we're interdisciplinary, we're open to students and faculty at all levels of the university. We're currently offering 45-minute sessions in 2 varieties. So you have the live chat sessions that allow you to interact in real time with the tutor, like using audiovisual capabilities or like a little chat box if you don't want to use the audiovisual. Document drop sessions allow you to submit your writing and have a tutor review it and then return it to you via email with their feedback. And both of those, they have their pros and cons. They're both incredibly helpful in a variety of writing situations. So if you're interested in brainstorming or outlining an ePortfolio or something like that, I would recommend more of like a live chat option where you can spend that time having a conversation with the tutor. But you can also schedule document drops to have a tutor go over things that you've already written. And obviously, it's not just limited to ePortfolios. Bring all of your writing projects. The UWC also provides handouts and digital workshops on various aspects of different writing projects, including what we've talked about today, so ePortfolio and reflective writing. I'm actually in the midst of designing a handful of short videos exploring some of the basics of ePortfolio that we covered today. We're hoping those will come out by the end of the semester, and then I'll have some more in-depth vids on the docs for the next semester. But we do regular tutor training on ePortfolio at the UWC, so you will be in good hands with whomever you might schedule a session. And I'm also on the schedule for about 4 days a week. I would be happy to work with you personally. So to schedule a session or check out those handouts and workshops, you can just visit our website here. And we can move into question time now if any of you have any questions, and then I can also drop links to each of these resources like in the chat box if anyone is interested in having those. But yes, questions.
Well, first of all, thank you, Percy, for an outstanding presentation. Thank you, too, for being willing to do this at this point in the semester, at in fact, the busiest time of the school year, and especially for adapting all of this material to the central concern of our class, and that's social justice. I would just commend everything that you've said to the students and say, additionally, one, this honors lecture series is an MT Engage class, as you know, and part of that involves having a beyond the classroom experience as one of our activities and one of our reflective essays. I certainly encourage everyone in here to consider using one of your papers that you write as an artifact for inclusion in your ePortfolio if it aligns with the presentation of yourself that you're constructing for the ePortfolio. I can say too that our honor students have been very successful since the beginning of this program, the MT Engage Scholarship, of competing and winning awards, winning the scholarship. And our students have produced incredible work. And so this is not just some extra activity. This is something, as Percy has pointed out, something that allows you to pull together aspects of your academic career, to present a portfolio of artifacts that you can present to future employers. There are just so many things that you can do with the portfolio, and I thought it best to bring in someone who could speak eloquently about it and answer questions about it. The other thing I would say is that I've mentioned it before, but I'm hoping you're more excited about it now. The University Writing Center is an excellent resource, and as Percy pointed out, it's an excellent resource for everyone at any stage of your academic career, for any kind of project dealing with communication. So don't be shy about approaching someone at the Writing Center. Reach out to Percy. She's an outstanding writing tutor, and there are many other outstanding writing tutors there too. So thank you, Percy. And now let's open this up for questions.
We also have multiple honor students who are working actually in the Writing Center. So if any of you do have honor theses that you're wanting to work on and specifically would like to work on them with another student who is also working on their own honors theses, who's going through the same process as you are, that could also be a really cool opportunity for you.